Whether you're looking for the best live bait cooler or you already own an Engel cooler like this, you're gonna wanna watch this video. I'm gonna go through not only why these coolers are great, my two favorite sizes, but then also the modifications you're gonna wanna do to get the most out of it. The two sizes that I recommend for every ice fisherman and open water angler is the 7.5 quart and the 13 quart of the Engel Live Bait Cooler. The reason why the Engel Live Bait Coolers I like so much more than the others is the sleek design. It's very compact for the size that you get. It is an insulated cooler as well. So you're gonna be able to use this out in the heat and then vice versa during the ice fishing season and not have to worry about that water freezing up if it were in a bucket or something else that was not insulated. A couple of other things, these are very positive latches, which means they have a really good latching action and they lock down in place really, really well. Now, once we open it up, the rubber seal across the top, what's great about that is the water is not going to be splashing around or seeping out from the inside when you've got it in the back of your truck in your ice fishing sled as you're going down the way or whatnot. Something to note though is if you do not have your aerator hose going through the lid, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you put the plug in so that obviously the water can't seep out of that hole. Otherwise, like I have on the 7.5 quart right now, I've currently got the aerator hose going through there. You still can sometimes get just a little bit of water seeping out there, but it's just little drops. It's nothing too major. The other thing that I really like about it, and this could be minor to most, is the interior color is a dark color, so you're not going to see the stains and scuffs as much as you would with like a white bucket or the white interior of some of the other brands that are out there. One thing that I really do like on the outside of the unit on both of these and all of theirs is the strap. As you can see here, there's a slot for it on the side and on the bottom, which allows you, when you're holding the unit, to actually hold it up from the strap, and it supports all the way through the entire bucket. So you have all of the weight being held by the strap rather than just a couple of plastic parts that could break off. The other benefit of using the strap on it is that you don't need to worry about if you don't have it latched. I've had this happen to me at the very beginning when I was getting used to it, is I would see this sitting down in my ice fishing sled and I'd go to grab the handle and pull it up, and it would dump out on the floor. Now I don't need to worry about that because I just grab the strap that's not tied to the lid, it's tied around the entire thing. So why the two different sizes? Which one would I recommend? Why do I have both? If you're going out on a trip and you want to be able to have a couple days worth of bait, I'd recommend getting the 13 quart. Or if you're doing something like tip-up fishing where you want some larger baits, for those day trips or when you're bringing less bait with, the 7.5 quarts is absolutely my favorite one. It's significantly smaller in size than the 13 quart, about half as big. It's a lot lighter, and you really notice the difference, not because of the bait that's in it, but because of the water and the weight that the water adds to the cooler. So if you only need a scoop of crappie minnows, a dozen shiners, or a small amount of any other bait, go with the 7.5 quart all day. So once you have your Engel Live Bait Cooler, it's gonna come with a couple things that I wanna talk about. The first thing are these nets. These nets, in theory, are actually pretty great. You can put it inside of the bucket, fill it with water, put your bait in. When you go to need a minnow out of it, pull out the minnow that you want, put it back in. That works great in theory. Here's the downsides to that. Number one, these things get really, really stinky over time. Let me show you. So this is one of the ones that I used originally for the first year. So you can see how nasty these get, and I've scrubbed these nets, and I've done everything that I could to try to keep them in best shape as possible. They smell, they look dingy, and it's not something that I want to have in there because it can actually kill the minnows based off of all the leftover residue that's on them. So one of the first things that I recommend doing is actually getting rid of this net. The other downside to these nets, especially during ice fishing season, is just imagine you open up your bait cooler, you want to get that shiner out so you can hook it up. So you pull your net out, you pull your shiner out, right? You got to pick around for that big one. If you're outside, you go to put this back in a bucket of water, a lot of times the sides of this actually freeze up and they get really stiff because the netting actually holds onto water. You're then sitting there trying to jam this in. It's formed incorrectly, so it won't actually fit back in. I just put the bait directly in the bucket. I upgrade the stone so it's a bigger size. I'll have linked down below so you can get that if you want. All the stuff that I talk about today, I'll have linked down in the description if you want to see the prices on them and maybe pick one of these up. So now that you have the bait directly in the bucket, what I like to do is pick up these small little yellow bait scoops, and I just toss it directly in the bucket. It floats in the water in the bucket, so you don't need to worry about it. You can also attach one to the outside if you want, but I like being able to close up the bait bucket when I'm not using it, latch the lid shut, and have nothing hanging on the outside other than the aerator itself. The next thing that you get with these bait coolers is the aerator pump from Engel. I'm not a fan of these. A couple reasons. Number one, it takes D batteries. So there's 2 D batteries that go in here. If you're gonna be using this all day, you're gonna need to be replacing these batteries quite frequently. And we all know the cost of batteries adds up over time. The second thing is how loud it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on and see if you can hear it. That's gonna get really annoying to listen to sitting in your boat or in your ice fishing shack or in your wheelhouse. You're not gonna want that. Oh, and by the way, this is the low setting. Let me flip it to high real quick. Even worse. What I recommend going with is these clam lithium aerators. What's great about it is they don't take D batteries. You simply have a cord that plugs directly into the top here and you charge it via a USB cable. Plug the USB wherever you want. It charges in a matter of a few hours and they work pretty dang good. The other thing is it's got a switch on the top that's a little bit different than the other one. The other one had a low setting and a high setting. This one has an intermittent setting and an on setting. So what's great about the intermittent setting is it will run for a period of time. I believe it's 10 seconds on, it'll stop for 10 seconds. 10 seconds on, it'll stop for 10 seconds. But it doubles the length of the battery time if you have it on the intermittent setting. If you have it on the on setting, it'll just run the entire time. The other thing that's cool about this, I don't use it this way, but if you wanted to, is you can actually pull this plug off of the bottom here, and you actually have a place for 2 hoses that you could actually plug in and run into your bait bucket. Lastly, let me show you how quiet this is. Let me see if you can hear it. A heck of a lot quieter. The other thing that I'd recommend for these guys is if you are in a wheelhouse or you're gonna be going home and you just need to, set it in your garage for a day or two and you wanna keep the bait in there, I highly recommend picking up one of these. It's a 110 air bubbles. It plugs directly into an outlet in your house, and then you obviously have the line that you can put your aerator hose directly into. And so this thing is ultra quiet, even quieter than the clam lithium aerator. So I highly recommend these. And if I remember right, these things are dirt cheap, like 10, 15 bucks. I'll link to it down below if you want to pick one of these up, or I have a couple of them in case I have bait in both of the buckets. Next up, something I'd highly recommend is getting G-Juice. G-Juice is a water additive that you put into the water inside of the bait bucket. What's great about this is it actually reduces the stress level of the fish so they don't die as quickly. You only put a tiny little bit in. A bottle this big has lasted me 2.5 years so far, year-round using it. This will probably get me through another 6 months just with what's left inside of this. It's also gonna detoxify the water, so you can actually use your tap water inside of your bait cooler and just put a little bit of this in and not have to worry about using well water or lake water to put in your bait bucket. Here's one that you're gonna think is probably pretty silly. This is a collapsible over the sink colander. Out of the sides, pull out these side handles that will sit on your sink top. The bottom collapses down. I just dump the entire bucket directly in here. All of the water goes out. The minnows stay inside of the colander. I then rinse out the bait cooler, fill it back up with water to the level that I want, put a little G-Juice in, and then I just take this and I dump it back into the bait cooler and we're good to go. This is one of the easiest ways that I found to change the water, and especially not using the nets that come inside of the bait coolers. You don't need to worry about cleaning the net or anything. This can just store away. You can bring it with you on a trip if you're gonna be doing it. Now that you'll be set up with your live bait cooler, check out my ice fishing tackle storage video for more tips. And if you have questions, comments, or other modifications that you guys like to do with these, comment down below, let me know. And as always, until next time, take it easy.